Hello, we're going to finish up our discussion of pottery analysis today by talking about decorative techniques. And we're going to focus on some common ones in the Parkin area and the Northeast Arkansas region. There are tons and tons of techniques throughout the Mississippian southeastern US, but we're going to focus on ones that we'll generally or typically see here. So the first one is called Parkin Punctated or punctated generally. And what that is it's literally little punctations pressed into pottery. So what the potter would have done is formed the vessel, whatever shape they wanted, they'd finish it. And then while the clay was still wet, before they let it dry and before they fired it, they would take something, maybe a fingernail, maybe a stick, maybe a hollow piece of cane, and press into the outside to make these little indentions in the clay. And this one, my fingernail fits in there, so that could have been what they used. And you can see that they're kind of just spread across the surface. They're not in any particular pattern, and often that's what we see with these punctated ones. This one seems to be a little more in lines, but still not perfectly straight. It's just kind of across the surface. And you can see these are a little straighter, so this might not have been a fingernail, some other kind of straight thing. This one I find very interesting because it almost looks like it was something maybe hollow, and they set it against here and then pushed it along, and you can tell that the clay was wet because you can see all that clay has been moved along. Especially close up, I can't get it to focus really close on this, but I mean, see how that clay was pushed along and then left there. And then on a whole vessel, that punctation looks like this. It just gives us kind of interesting pattern across the whole body of a thing. Not particularly in lines or any kind of bigger shape, just punctations across the surface. And then the second big decorative technique that we see is incision. And incisions generally will be formed in that same way. So you form the whole vessel, then while the clay is still wet, before you dry it or fire it, you take something sharp, maybe a stick, and typically we'll see incised lines. And on this one, you can see again, we have proof that the clay was wet because you can see that the clay has been displaced by running something along here. And you can also see the order in which these lines were drawn, which shows us that the clay is being moved, so it must have been wet. So they made this line, and then this line, and then this line came down over the top of those. And it made this kind of grid pattern. So we see different patterns in incisioning. So this one's a grid pattern. And then we see this one, and it's got 3 parallel lines running in this direction, and then at least 2 running in this direction. So it's forming some kind of pattern of different orientations of parallel lines. Usually they end up being big triangles, but they don't have to be. And again, this is done when the clay is still wet. And then on this one, it's a little rim piece, and we can see we've got incisions going 2 different ways, but we just have so little of it that we can't tell what pattern it's maybe going to form further down. And then this jar from the other day, if you remember, it has incisions on the neck part. And you can see it's got that grid pattern going on up there too. And you can see each of these are a little bit different. And just like we talked about in the other videos, these are individual potters, and they're making these to their needs and wants and what they like and what they prefer and how they like doing things. So this person drew these this way and incised them in this way. Other people incised them with something bigger and made larger incisions. It's all kind of personal preference and what kind of look they were going for and what they were trying to do. So you'll see there's 2 other decoration techniques on this vessel. And the first one is these nodes all over the body, and they are literally just little pieces of clay that were adhered to the body after the vessel was finished. And we know that they're adhered to the body and not somehow like pinched out of the body, because here we can see where one broke off and fell off. It was adhered here, but it's not there anymore, so we can tell they were just stuck onto the outside of the body. And then the other part is these handles, and this is called a strap handle. And you can see it's attached at the lip, and then it's attached at the neck, and there's a little space in there where you could run some string or rope so that you could suspend this jar if you wanted to. And what's interesting about handles is earlier in time, typically we find bigger strap handles that would be more functional. You could put bigger rope in there, hold heavier things. And then as time progresses later, we find that many handles become purely decorative. You don't even get that little bit of space anymore. They'll just be adhered straight to the neck to look like a handle and be decorative, but they aren't actually functioning as handles anymore. You can see this jar would have had 4. One is missing. But again, nodes, incisions, and handles all on one vessel. And interestingly, if we didn't have this as a full vessel and we just had one little piece, we couldn't know that it had all of those different forms. We might only see one little piece with nodes on it, or one little piece with incisions on it. Or sometimes this piece does have both not nodes, punctations and incisions, so that's exciting, even though it's on this tiny little piece. So we can't tell what vessel form it's from, really, but we can say that it has 2 different decorative techniques on it, which is interesting, but that's all it can really tell us about that. And then the last major thing that we see here is painting. And so this bottle is a Carson Red on buff, is what it's called. So it's got this red paint just on the bottle, the color of the bottle. And this has 4 red stripes that were painted from the neck down to the base. And there is some red paint on the neck. So it could be that the whole neck used to be red, or there used to be a circle of red around. And we don't, I mean, a lot of times we see stripes of this red, but sometimes you can see other patterns as well. And sometimes we have this sherd here that's probably from a bowl, and both the outside and the inside are completely covered in red. And we don't know what was further down in the bowl, if the whole bowl was completely red or just the lip and rim parts. We can't tell because we only have this little section of it. But another thing that we have in paint is sometimes we have white paint. And we don't have any of that here. That's typically found a little further north, and generally called Nodina red and white painting. And so you'll see red and white paint together on a vessel. But yeah, so I guess typically those are the kinds of decorative techniques that you see in this region. And those techniques can be combined in different ways and put on different parts of a vessel. And archaeologists have written huge books and many, many articles giving those decorative techniques and their different combinations and locations, names, types, varieties, all that stuff. And I can link some of that information down in the comment section. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how decorations are made and what kind of decorations we have and how people were doing that. So I hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you again next week with a different artifact type. So if you have one that you're really wanting to hear about, let me know in the comments and maybe we can do that. Otherwise, I will see you next week with something else. Talk to you soon. Bye.